Introducing the leisure vehicle of the future, a strange-looking hybrid that goes by the name of the Pulse car. And after 10 minutes at the wheel, I challenge anyone not to be hooked on the idea of having one in your garage.
The automobile cannot be made out of cement and iron anymore. It just can't be done.
By the year 2000, will everyone be driving vehicles like this?
Oh, absolutely. All vehicles in the future are going to end up looking somewhat like this. They will be very streamlined. They'll be very smooth.
So is this the car of the future? Only time will tell.
My dad's stuck on the job, so I told him I'd get some pictures.
Fixing this whole thing up? I don't know if you guys have like a forklift here. Okay.
Well, what is this thing? I don't know either. Hey everyone, welcome to my video. My name is Nick. Really quickly, just want to explain what in the world this thing is, and then we'll jump in right away to the frame building of this thing. This is called a Pulse Litestar, some people call it. Some people call it an OMCC Pulse. Some people call it just a Litestar. Some call it just a Pulse. Some people call it a spaceship, airplane, whatever you want to call it. The real name should be an OMCC Pulse. This one, they did make a OMCC Litestar as well. This one is an OMCC Pulse, and basically OMCC stands for Owasso Motor Car Company. These were made in Owasso, Michigan, and the exact number is between 340 to 350. I think somewhere in there they made of these things. So very hard to find. This is Pulse number 241, and this is a complete restoration. You find these things up on billboards, in people's backyards, a lot of advertising because they're just so dang unique. So this is Pulse number 241, and this one is kind of unique. I actually found this one on Craigslist, and I am a part of the Pulse Litestar group, and a club member had posted it in there. And I saw the pictures of it, and I was kind of kicking around the idea. It was down in Texas, so it was quite far away from me, being here in Wisconsin. So I let it sit on there for quite a bit, and it actually really hit me when all of a sudden winter was coming, and I really wanted one of these things. And so I messaged the person, and we kind of worked something out. He actually brought this Pulse all the way up from Texas, delivered it right to the shop, which was really cool. We worked that all into the purchase price and all that. But the story on this Pulse is very unique. An insurance company down in Texas, forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, Pflugerville. It's a very unique name. It's by Austin, Texas. An insurance company actually had this on top of their building. That's right, it was used as an advertisement piece. The actual company had this Pulse as their picture for their business, and it was on top of their roof. Now, why it was on top of their roof, the story that I got was that the first one that they purchased was actually stolen, and it was on the ground in front of the business. And apparently in the middle of the night, some people thought it would be funny to go and steal this thing. And it was kind of up on like a rock wall, if you will, because they had it as like a stance. And they pushed it off and it completely cracked, and the outriggers, the two little wings you see there, those cracked, and the people ran away, and the person came back, the business owner, in the morning and found their Pulse all cracked up. So what did he do? He went out and he bought Pulse number 241, and they stuck it on top of the roof. You could see it from the highway, which was kind of unique. And as you walked up, you could see it, and it's pretty unique. So they painted like the top black and shot a lot of it with spray cans. So the paint obviously is in very bad shape. That being said, this Pulse in general is in very bad shape. So there was a place called Rose Marine down in Texas, and they actually drove from Michigan to Texas back in the 80s, and they delivered these things down in Texas. They were a huge dealer for Pulse, or for OMCC at the time, and they sold a ton of these down in Texas. So you can find a couple of them down in Texas from what I see that were Rose Marine Pulses that actually brought them down in the 80s. They actually drove a Pulse frame from Michigan down to Texas, and they explained it was freezing up in Michigan, and when they got to Texas it was nice and hot, so that was kind of funny. That being said, Pulse 241 is in very rough shape. The Texas heat and weather did not do this thing too good. Being on the roof for 20 some odd years did not do this thing justice. The canopy was always closed, and although they painted it black in there to try to keep the sun out and everything, it's horrible. It was really bad. Basically, when this thing got delivered on the trailer, I tried filming some of it, but it was such a nightmare to get this thing off, as you saw in the beginning. We had a heck of a time. The frame collapsed, it blew through the fiberglass. The frame was completely rotten on this thing. Every piece of metal in this thing was rotten. I mean, it just collected water up on top of that building. All the electronics are shot. There was no engine included with this. This one came with a Yamaha 400cc, not included with this. They took it out when they stuck it up on top of the roof. So I was basically buying a bunch of fiberglass and a rotten frame to go off of. So luckily, me and Dustin, he's very good at welding, very good at fabricating. We actually took apart this frame. There was just nothing left, really. We just basically took a bunch of measurements. It's a pretty basic frame to go off of. And that's what you're gonna see in this video of us building this frame. This is gonna be the part one. You can kind of see it's a very simple design, and we actually upgraded the circle round tube in the middle, the actual backbone, to a 4x4 square piece. That being said, like I was saying, everything is shot. There's no electronics. The seats, those are barely holding on. The carpet inside, all rotten. We're basically starting fresh. We're building a custom Pulse, but it does have the serial that also didn't come with a title. So a lot of hoops to jump through with this Pulse. I don't want to waste too much time explaining these things because they're just so different and so weird that they're kind of hard to follow if I'm even saying the right information. This is just from what I've read on the internet, the autocycles.org web that are all about these things. You can classify them as a motorcycle, an autocycle, not a car, because the outriggers, only 3 tires really touch at one time. And so I titled mine as an autocycle, or I'm trying to get a title as an autocycle. You don't need a motorcycle license. And being an autocycle, we don't really have road tax up here, so that was pretty nice. You could get these things with a 400cc Yamaha motor, or I believe it was a 500cc Honda engine. And then they got really smart, and towards the end of production, they actually put a Honda Goldwing 1100 or 1200 in the back of these things. And that's what we are doing. We're actually going to a GL 1100. It's liquid cooled, so hopefully it's going to stay cooler. It's got more power. This one came with a 400 Yamaha, and basically the problems they were having was they were air cooled and they were so underpowered. They weren't meant to push something this big. So being air cooled, they would overheat like crazy. People were having overheating problems. The first few hundred of these that came out, they were overheating at stoplights, parades. I mean, you name it. I've read that a few people with these Yamaha 400 engines, they would be at stoplights and they would just slip the clutch. They wouldn't move. They didn't have reverse, so to get out, you actually had to get out of the spot. You actually had to climb out of the canopy and push it backwards. But later in production, they did start getting smart. They actually made up a homemade gear, if you will, that you push a button on the dash and a lever you push backwards, and it pushes this paddle out, and it actually reverses the rear tires. So kind of unique. There's a lot of reduction gears in there from what I read, and I don't know if it works that great. They said you need a really high-powered battery for it to work. A lot of cranking amps, and they started getting smart towards the end of production. They came with liquid-cooled GL 1100 or 1200 Honda engines. You'd see the radiators sticking out on the side of them, and they look kind of unique, and they actually did stay a little cooler as long as you were moving and keeping that radiator moving, and you could get off the stop signs a lot quicker. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this frame building episode. I figure in part 2, we'll probably start the wiring harness and start adding all the electronics and whatnot. So look for that one pretty soon.
So we gotta clean this all up and pretty much make a new piece like that. Now we need to figure out the length of this.
All right, so here it is. The 99% of the Pulse chassis is done. Now I say 99% because 1% still needs to be done to it. We need to put two radiators, two little baby Goldwing 1500 radiators in the back of the Pulse yet, so we need to make up some brackets and stuff to make it work. But the chassis needs to be inside of the body to make that work. So I'm right in the middle of body work, and we can't do it right now, so that's coming up soon. So, but 99%, here it is. This is what it's looking like. Basically, I do want to say we did get a little ahead of ourselves, just a little bit. The air suspension has been hooked up, where you're going to see, and some of the electrical. But we had to keep going to make things keep moving, and we got a little ahead of ourselves. But this is it. I'm going to show you what we did, what we had to work with. I'm sure as you guys saw through the whole video, there's nothing left. It was all rotted. So we basically had to start from scratch, but I'll show you what was left over and basically what we did to make it work. So this is it. This is the 99%. We'll give you an inside look, and it's kind of crazy, this thing. It looks insane. This is the bare bones, what's gonna be hidden in that body. So super cool, let's check it out. All right, so you were actually looking at the amount of camber that this thing takes. That's really it. Now I do want to say it is adjustable, so it is fixed, and this is how you adjust it. You get these little rods back here that are connected to the inner portion of the chassis, and I just have it sitting on some blocks right now because it's a little tippy and I just want to leave it how it is. But anyhow, that is it right there. So that is how you adjust your camber. Now, how this works is basically it runs on 3 wheels. So one wheel is not touching, and then when you come to a stop, it kind of just tilts and goes one way. You have this safety hoop here. That's your safety. There you go. That little hoop in the front. The rear doesn't even have any. There's the original serial for this Pulse, 1100, right in the back. 1100 Gull Wing. Basically, this is what we dealt with. Now, I do want to say, like I was saying before, we got some wiring hooked up and all that, but if you can look past it, I'm going to show you what it is below. It's actually very simple how this thing works. Basically, you got rods that just go straight back to the engine. This is your clutch. Your clutch will run straight back to this rod here, and inside of the body, there's actually a mounter clip that's mounted there, and then the cable will run across and go to the clutch on the other side. Very simple. Shifter, as you can see here, rod runs straight back, and it cuts across right there. Let me run to the other side, and then it comes up to this, and then straight down to the shifter. Now, I do want to say from the factory, it was a terrible design. We actually reinvented that. This rod, everything was the same all the way up until this rod point right here. And what this rod did is it actually came below this case, and what they did is they welded a bolt that came off here, and this rod came straight to there, and it was just terrible. From what I'm reading, basically you'd go forward or backwards, and it just would not work. So super simple, easy design that Dustin recreated for us. So basically when you shift it, it's a lot better. We do need to put, we just have some washers in there for now, but we're actually gonna get a bigger spacer to go on right there. So that is how that works. This whole thing here was original. So that is what the original Pulse, and in here, the stem going back, steering stem here, was original. But other than that, everything down, across, the wings or the outriggers were rebuilt. This cross tube stayed the same. The brackets going up, tubes going up, stayed the same. And that's it. That was it. We rebuilt this crossbar, added more bracing back here, more bracing here, bracing in the middle. It's behind the battery, you can't really see it. There's more bracing in the middle, more bracing down below. We added extra bracing in the front. We just really reinforced it because from what I was reading, the original circle tube that came down the middle, believe it or not, would flex. You could actually, they'd say you could actually feel it moving. So kind of scary. So we actually went with the 4x4 square tube, reinforced everywhere we could, and hopefully we get no flexing now. We rebuilt the bearings. Bearings on the outriggers or the wings have been redone. Carbs have been rebuilt. It almost looks like something from like Batman or something. I don't know. So the bolts are in there pretty much just to hold it, just to keep it in place. All that will be changed out when it goes into the body again. It'll get all new hardware, but we had to put it all together like this, just mock it up, just so we can make sure everything is exactly how it needs to be before it hits the body, because putting this thing together when it's in the body is a nightmare in itself. So I figure in part 2, what we're gonna do, hopefully I'm not packing too much into this, we're gonna do the wiring, the air suspension, the brake lines, the brake hoses, the rebuilding the caliper, all that stuff. into part 2. Probably wiring up that new dash, just depending how far we get, we'll have to see. But that will be in part 2. There'll be a lot more to explain, a lot more to do. And we had a lot of fun building this this chassis. I gotta thank Dustin, my buddy Dustin. Without him, none of this would have been possible. I'm trying to figure out some weird things to add to this. In part 2, we got some strobe lights, we got a custom dash, GPS, just kind of some crazy things. So I just really want this thing to be nuts. And so if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them in the comments. We'll definitely probably add it to this Pulse. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. I had a ton of fun doing this with Dustin, and I'm excited for part 2. So see you then.
Pulse cars aren't exactly in abundance at the moment, but if you are one of the more than 300 people who own one, then happy motoring. And if you do happen to drive past in your Pulse one day, please show some heart.